Ladies and gentlemen, let us get something absolutely straight right now, because what unfolded at Cleveland Browns minicamp today demands a conversation that is honest, direct, and completely unwilling to dance around the truth the way certain corners of Cleveland Browns media have been doing for far too long. What happened on that practice field today did not trickle out slowly or require careful analysis to interpret. It arrived with force and clarity, clip after clip, report after report, confirmation after confirmation, building into a picture that is impossible to misread if you are willing to look at it with open eyes and an honest mind. And what that picture shows is something that a segment of the Cleveland media landscape has been quietly, persistently, and unsuccessfully trying to prevent from becoming the dominant narrative surrounding this football team. Shedeur Sanders received first-team reps at Cleveland Browns minicamp today. Let that statement exist on its own for a full moment before we move anywhere else in this conversation. Not a shared rotation designed to preserve ambiguity. Not a manufactured competition where both quarterbacks receive equal billing so nobody has to commit to anything publicly. Not a carefully staged session built to generate headlines without revealing actual organizational thinking. Shedeur Sanders was the first quarterback to step into 11-on-11 drills at Cleveland Browns minicamp, and that fact was documented, filmed, reported, and confirmed by multiple independent observers who were standing on the sideline with their own eyes and their own cameras watching it happen in real time. There is no interpretation required. There is no spin that changes what occurred. The football was snapped, and Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback standing behind that center when it happened. And this is precisely why it matters so deeply that Cleveland Browns fans stop outsourcing their understanding of this team to media voices that have demonstrated, repeatedly and consistently, a willingness to shade the truth in ways that serve access rather than accuracy. Because the reality on that field today was clear. But if you had been consuming only certain approved Cleveland Browns media narratives over the past several weeks, you would have been led to believe that this quarterback situation was far murkier, far more genuinely competitive, and far less directionally settled than what today's practice revealed. The field does not lie. Cameras do not lie. And the footage that poured out of that Cleveland Browns facility today tells a story that is fundamentally different from the one that has been carefully constructed and cautiously distributed by outlets more interested in maintaining their relationships inside that building than in telling their audiences what is actually happening. So let us go through what actually happened, piece by piece, because every detail carries weight and every detail deserves to be examined with the full seriousness it warrants. Shedeur Sanders was first up in 11-on-11 drills. He was the first quarterback to operate with the first-team unit when Cleveland's offense broke into team drills during today's minicamp session. He took all the reps available to him during the low-speed team period. He was in that huddle, calling plays, executing the offense, distributing the football to the receivers around him, and doing all of it in front of a coaching staff that was watching and evaluating every single decision he made from the moment he stepped between the hashes. Reports from credible observers on the ground confirmed this plainly. Scott, one of the reporters tracking the session in real time, stated clearly that Shedeur Sanders was first up at first-team drills. Multiple clips emerged throughout the session showing Sanders taking snaps, executing handoffs, and delivering passes during the 11-on-11 portion of practice. Additional reporting confirmed that Sanders was taking all the reps during the low-speed team period, and that this was, without question, his day on that practice field. His day. That phrase matters. Because in the NFL, days belong to quarterbacks who have earned them. Days do not get handed out as courtesy gestures or participation awards. When a coaching staff structures a practice around a specific quarterback leading the first-team unit through 11-on-11 drills, that structure reflects a genuine evaluation of what that coaching staff has seen and what it believes. It is the most direct form of organizational communication available in professional football, and today, the Cleveland Browns communicated something very specific about Shedeur Sanders through the structure of their own practice. Now let us talk about what Sanders actually produced during his time on that field, because the question of whether he received first-team reps is only half the story. The other half is what he did with them, and the answer to that question is equally important and equally clear. Sanders was throwing passes to Isaiah Bond and multiple other wide receivers throughout the session. There was footage of him executing handoffs as part of the offensive operation. And there was one specific throw, a dart delivered to what appeared to be Isaiah Bond, that stood out from everything else that came through on the clips circulating from that practice. Sharp. On time. Delivered with the kind of decisiveness that separates quarterbacks who are thinking from quarterbacks who have internalized the system deeply enough that their responses have become instinctive rather than calculated. That is not a throw made by a quarterback still finding his footing. That is a throw made by a young signal caller who has done the work, absorbed the playbook, built the mental model of what this offense is designed to do, and is now beginning to express that understanding through the physical execution of the football. That is development happening in real time on a Cleveland Browns practice field, and it is exactly what this franchise needs to see from the player they are building toward 2026 around. There is one additional detail from today's practice that deserves its own dedicated examination, because it speaks to something deeper than just a single good session or a favorable rep count. Shedeur Sanders was wearing a camera mounted directly on his helmet during today's minicamp. This is a coaching tool that fundamentally changes what a staff is able to see and evaluate when it comes to quarterback development, and the decision to deploy it on Sanders today was not casual or coincidental. It was deliberate. It was a specific choice made by Todd Monken and his staff, and it reveals something important about the depth of investment this coaching staff is making in truly understanding what this quarterback brings to the table. A helmet camera does not simply show whether a throw was accurate or whether a route was run correctly. It captures the quarterback's literal field of vision at every moment of the play. It shows what he sees at the line of scrimmage before the snap is taken. It documents where his eyes go in the first half second after the ball is in his hands. It reveals whether he is processing the coverage in front of him quickly enough to get to his second and third reads, or whether he is locking onto his primary option before the defense gives him a reason to move on. It is the most complete diagnostic tool available to a modern NFL coaching staff for evaluating quarterback decision-making, and Todd Monken chose to use it on Shedeur Sanders today. You do not make that choice about a player you have mentally categorized as a backup. You do not invest that level of evaluative infrastructure in a quarterback you are not genuinely trying to develop and genuinely trying to understand at the deepest possible level. That helmet camera on Shedeur Sanders' helmet today was not a gimmick. It was a statement about how seriously this coaching staff is taking the project of building this young quarterback into the player this franchise needs him to become. And speaking of statements, let us talk about the jersey. Shedeur Sanders was wearing the number 2 jersey in a Cleveland Browns uniform today for the first time. That is a visual milestone that carries real meaning beyond the purely symbolic. A quarterback establishing his number in a franchise uniform is a player beginning to build the identity that connects him to that organization in the minds of his teammates, his coaches, his fanbase, and eventually the broader football world. Number 2, Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns. That image existed on a football field today, documented on video, distributed across platforms, seen by fans and analysts and everyone paying attention to what is being built in Cleveland. It is the beginning of a visual legacy, and it started today. Now we have to be willing to look at the complete picture of today, because complete honesty requires acknowledging both what went right and what continues to raise legitimate questions about the organizational alignment of this football team. And what went wrong today, or more precisely what was absent today, matters just as much as what Sanders produced on that practice field. Myles Garrett did not attend Cleveland Browns minicamp today. Jerry Jeudy did not attend Cleveland Browns minicamp today. Denzel Ward did not attend. Grant Delpit did not attend. All 4 of those players were absent from a voluntary minicamp session, and while the voluntary label carries specific contractual meaning within the NFL's collective bargaining framework, it does not neutralize the cultural and organizational significance of those absences. In a professional football building that is attempting to establish a new identity, a new standard, and a new direction under a new coaching staff, the decision of established veterans to stay away from voluntary team activities sends a signal that cannot simply be categorized as a routine business decision and filed away without further examination. The Myles Garrett situation sits at the center of this concern and demands the most direct and honest analysis, because Garrett is not simply one roster contributor among many making an individual choice about his offseason schedule. He is the most significant defensive player on this roster. He is the player whose presence or absence in the building sets a cultural temperature that every other person in that locker room can feel. When Garrett is engaged and present and visibly invested in what the team is building, that investment radiates outward and elevates the commitment level of the players around him. When Garrett is absent, and when that absence comes against the backdrop of broader conversations about his long-term desire to remain in Cleveland, the silence that fills the space where his presence should be is loud and uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. This is not the first time Garrett has chosen not to participate in voluntary team activities this offseason. And the accumulation of those choices, each one individually defensible within the letter of his contract, collectively builds a narrative about the state of his relationship with this franchise that the Cleveland Browns organization has not yet addressed with the clarity and directness that the situation demands. Every missed voluntary session adds another layer to that narrative. Every report of his absence generates another round of questions that team leadership has not answered in a way that puts those questions to rest permanently. Jerry Jeudy's absence carries its own separate set of consequences that deserve genuine attention. Jeudy is a wide receiver who arrived in Cleveland with significant expectations attached to his role in Todd Monken's offense, and the development of a genuine, functional, intuitive connection between him and Shedeur Sanders is one of the most important ongoing projects this team has in front of it during the offseason program. That connection does not get built through film study alone. It does not emerge from meetings and walkthroughs. It is forged through repetitions on a live practice field, through the experience of running the same routes against the same looks over and over until the timing between the quarterback and the receiver becomes automatic rather than calculated. Every session that Jeudy misses while Sanders is on the field working is a session during which that connection is not being built between the two of them specifically. Sanders is building chemistry with the receivers who are present. He is developing timing with the players who showed up and are doing the work alongside him. And while that work has value regardless of who the specific receivers are, the absence of Jeudy from those reps represents a real and quantifiable cost to the development of the specific quarterback-receiver relationship that this offense needs to function at its highest possible level. Denzel Ward and Grant Delpit absent on the defensive side creates an additional layer of concern about the overall state of player buy-in across this entire roster, not just at the positions directly connected to the offensive development storyline. A team building genuine cohesion needs its significant contributors present and working together during every available opportunity in the offseason program. When multiple important players across different position groups are simultaneously choosing to stay away from voluntary activities, it raises questions about the organizational culture that no amount of positive quarterback footage can fully answer on its own. And yet, here is the fundamental truth that must be stated clearly and without hesitation, because it is what today's practice field actually demonstrated regardless of everything else swirling around it. Shedeur Sanders did everything right today. Everything. He showed up when questions exist about whether all of his teammates share his level of commitment to this process. He was first into 11 on 11 drills when the order of those reps carries real organizational meaning. He delivered the football with precision and timing that reflected genuine preparation and genuine absorption of the system he is operating in. He wore the number 2 jersey in a Browns uniform and began establishing the visual identity of a franchise quarterback. He wore a helmet camera and gave his coaching staff the most complete possible window into how he processes the game, demonstrating a willingness to be fully transparent with the people responsible for his development. That is a young quarterback doing exactly what a young quarterback needs to do. That is a player taking his moments seriously and responding to the opportunity in front of him with exactly the kind of effort and focus and performance that justifies the investment being made in his future. Todd Monken saw it. He structured the practice to give Sanders that opportunity, and Sanders delivered. The helmet camera will give Monken even more information than what was visible from the sideline, and if what Sanders showed during the live portion of the session is any indication, the film from that camera is going to confirm what the observers on the ground already reported. This is a quarterback who is ready to be developed into something significant within this offense. Deshaun Watson did take over during the team period portion of the session, and Monken acknowledged that quarterback assignments would shift from day to day as the evaluation process continues. That is honest process management, and it should be understood for what it is, a coaching staff being transparent about the ongoing nature of their evaluation rather than declaring a permanent outcome from a single minicamp session. But do not allow the day-to-day framing to diminish the significance of the ordering that took place today. When the first 11-on-11 drills of Minicamp began, Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback standing under center with the first team unit. That is where this coaching staff chose to start. That is the quarterback they chose to lead that opening sequence of the most revealing portion of their practice. And that choice, made deliberately by a coaching staff that understands exactly what it is communicating through the structure of its practice, tells you something real and important about the direction this franchise is moving. The Cleveland Browns media landscape owes its audience a clear and honest accounting of what today showed. The narrative of permanent, genuine, unresolved ambiguity around this quarterback situation does not survive contact with the footage that came out of that practice facility today. Shedeur Sanders was first. He was sharp. He was present. He was wearing the number 2 jersey in the helmet camera and operating with the first team unit in the most revealing context available during the offseason program. That is the truth of what happened today. Not a version of it. Not a framing of it. The truth of it. And Cleveland Browns fans who have been patient and invested and genuinely curious about the direction of their franchise deserve to have that truth delivered to them straight, without the softening and the hedging and the careful access protecting language that is too often substituted for honest reporting in that market. Shedeur Sanders was first today. He performed. He delivered. He showed up when others did not. And the 2026 Cleveland Browns season, the season this entire current organizational project is building toward, took a meaningful step forward on that practice field because of what he did. The rest of this organization now needs to decide if it is going to rise to meet the standard that number 2 set today. Because that standard was high. And it was real. And it was captured on camera for everyone to see exactly what it looks like when a young quarterback takes his moments seriously and refuses to waste it. That is the story of today. That is what the field said. And the field, as always, told the truth.